In the last lesson, I began creating a layout to compare my gross profit for my current and prior years to date, and I showed you the different ways that you can add rows and the different row properties. I'm now going to continue doing the same for my columns. I've shown the final design on screen again to remind you what we are working towards. There are also three types of columns you can add. First, there are amount-based ones, which let you determine the financial formula you would like to use for a field. My actual year to date for the current and prior years are examples of these. Then there are calculations which work just like rows, but this time let you add different columns together. My variance one is an example of this. Then lastly, there are spaces, which in the case of columns act only as separators. I've opened up my report and I'm going to start by selecting Add a set of columns, which lets you insert more than one field at a time. A dialog will then appear listing a number of common reporting columns as well as different combinations of them. For example, actual and actual versus prior variance. And to the right is a convenient period and quarters selector. You'll notice there is an item to easily include the columns I want, actual versus prior year-to-date variance, and by selecting it, the three fields are added at the top of the dialog. Since I want to demonstrate using the other options to create columns, I'm only going to leave the first one and then select period 12 as I want it to refer to the entire year. Take note that you can also use the space button to add gaps to your columns if you want to group them in a particular way from here. By clicking OK, the one I've chosen is added to the layout. For the second field, I'm going to use Add a Column, which, like with rows, lets you define a single one from scratch. A blank one is added to the area, and the options for it are shown. I'm going to give it the name Prior Actual Year-to-Date Balance 12. I can then choose whether I want it to be an amount or calculation, and depending on the selection, the options below will change accordingly. This will obviously be an amount, so I'm going to leave that selected. I can then choose the amount type, which is the base financial formula I wanted used, and I'm going to select Actual Year to Date. The next field is then used to indicate the year you want to pull values for. By default, the variable year is entered and means the value selected in the report's year filter will be used. You can change this though. If you click on the cell, you're given three options, which include the current one, the ability to refer to a number of years prior to the filter value, or the option to type in a specific year. Since this column is for my prior year, I'm going to use the second option and leave the value entered as 1. You're then given a number of choices for the period you'd like the field to refer to, including your 12 reporting divisions, quarters, and also included are the current and prior periods. The last two are dynamic options, which will make use of the value selected in the report's period filter. I'm going to choose 12 again so that the column takes the entire year into account. Lastly, I have the option to hide the column, which, like with rows, will hide it when the report is run. I don't need to worry about this, and I'm going to click OK. The third field is my variance one, and I'm going to use Add a Column again for this. I'm going to give it the name Actual versus Prior Variance, and this time, since it requires a calculation, choose that as the type. Now, when I click on the calculation field, a column calculator appears, which works in the same way as the rows calculator. To work out my variance, I'm going to subtract my prior column from my actual one and click OK. I'm then given the options Show as Percentage, Variance, and Hide Column. Show as Percentage, similar to rows, will display the values in the column as percentages, and once again, Hide Column will hide the field in the run report. In order for the values in a variance column to be displayed correctly, the second option needs to be checked, so I'm going to do this and click OK. The last thing I want to do is add a gap between my second and third fields to make them look neater. I'm going to use Add a Space for this and drag the item into place. Note that because column separators don't usually contain titles, unlike rows, they can't be added using Add a Column and don't include any properties. My columns are now complete, and before going any further, I'm going to save them as a quick add. This is done just like with rows. So I'm going to select the area, then Quick Add Columns from the task pane. Click on Save Current Columns as Quick Adds and enter the name Actual versus Prior Year-to-Date Columns. After clicking OK, they are added to the list and the ability to delete them is also given. Take note that apart from being available in the Designer for reuse, both the columns and the rows that you save are added to the Columns and Rows dropdowns when quick creating a report from the Financials folder. To finish off my layout, I want to add a logo and set the filters. But as you're already familiar with this, instead of working through it, I'm going to jump ahead to where it's already been done. I can now click Run. The report is loaded in the same window, displaying the values I want. To view other videos in this series, go to youtube.com/sageintelligence. Also connect with us at sageintelligence.com and sageintelligencecommunity.com. And if you'd like to brush up on your Excel skills, check out our online courses at sageintelligenceacademy.com. Lastly, we love feedback, so if you found this video useful, please like it and share it on your social media channels.